If the Pershing II was a dagger to the heart, the Senior 71 Blackbird was a ghost in the sky, an omnipresent, untouchable spectre that haunted Soviet airspace. It wasn't merely fast, it was impossibly fast, cruising at Mach 3.2, 3 times the speed of sound, at altitudes exceeding 85,000 feet. 9 minutes. That was all they had. 6 minutes from the moment the alarm blared to the potential obliteration of their capital, their leadership, their very command structure. This wasn't a hypothetical scenario. This was the grim reality imposed by a weapon so swift, so precise. It redefined the meaning of strategic vulnerability, the American Pershing II missile. Deep within the concrete labyrinths beneath Moscow, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the scent of stale coffee, generals, their faces etched with decades of Cold War paranoia, stared at their maps, at their screens, at the stark, terrifying truth. Deep within the concrete labyrinths beneath Moscow, air thick with cigarette smoke and the scent of stale coffee, generals, their faces etched with decades of Cold War paranoia, stared at their maps, at their screens, at the stark, terrifying truth. This wasn't about a broad, retaliatory strike. This was about decapitation, about severing the head of the Soviet beast before it could even twitch. The psychological impact was devastating. It wasn't merely the threat of destruction, it was the terror of utter helplessness, the crushing realization that their vast military machine, their formidable defenses, were rendered impotent against a threat that moved faster than thought, faster than reaction. The Pershing II wasn't just a weapon. It was a statement, a brutal declaration of American technological dominance that plunged the Soviet leadership into a perpetual state of existential dread. They knew, with a certainty that chilled them to the bone, that in those 6 agonizing minutes, This was the opening salvo in a different kind of war, a war waged not just with bombs and bullets, but with the chilling spectre of technological superiority, designed to break the enemy's will before a single shot was fired. This was the American edge, sharp and unforgiving, carving a path of fear through the heart of the Soviet Empire. And it was just the beginning. The skies above them held another phantom, a silent, untouchable predator that mocked their every defense, a harbinger of a new era of aerial supremacy. The very thought of such a weapon, poised on their doorstep, capable of such swift and decisive action, became a constant, gnawing anxiety that permeated every strategic discussion and every military exercise. It was a stark, undeniable symbol of a power they could not match, a speed they could not counter, and a precision that rendered their vast defensive networks tragically insufficient. This was the dawn of a new kind of terror, one measured in minutes, not miles, and it forever altered the calculus. The shadow of the Pershing II loomed large, a constant reminder of their vulnerability, a silent scream in the heart of the Soviet Union. It was a weapon that didn't just threaten physical destruction, it threatened the very psychological foundation of their power, sowing seeds of doubt and fear. The implications were clear. The Americans were not just playing a game of deterrence, they were playing to win, and they were doing so with a technological audacity that left their adversaries breathless and terrified. The 6-minute nightmare was real, and it was just the beginning of their techno. If the Pershing II was a dagger to the heart, the Senior 71 Blackbird was a ghost in the sky, an omnipresent, untouchable spectre that haunted Soviet airspace. It wasn't merely fast, it was impossibly fast, cruising at Mach 3.2, 3 times the speed of sound, at altitudes exceeding 85,000 feet. At these stratospheric heights, the air was thin, the temperatures extreme, and the Blackbird became a dark, silent arrow, piercing the very fabric of Soviet air defense. Soviet pilots, like Major Michael Myaki of the elite MiG-31 interceptor force, spoke of the adrenaline burst and nervousness that accompanied every Senior 71 sighting. Their advanced interceptors, the pride of Soviet aviation, were designed to counter the fastest threats. Yet, against the Blackbear, Myaki recounted the frantic scramble, the precise 16-minute launch window required to even attempt an intercept, and the crushing realization that, even if they launched on time, the Senior 71 would often simply accelerate away, leaving them trailing in its wake. Over its 3-decade operational life, more than 4,000 missiles were fired at the Blackbird. Not a single one found its mark. The Senior 71 was never shot down. This wasn't just a testament to its engineering. It was a profound psychological victory. The Soviets poured immense resources into tracking, intercepting and ultimately trying to understand this elusive aircraft. They developed new radar systems, faster interceptors, and complex tactical doctrines, all in a desperate, ultimately futile, attempt to counter a threat they could barely peer. The Blackbird became a symbol of their technological inferiority, a constant nagging reminder that American ingenuity had once again outmaneuvered them. It was a machine that didn't just gather intelligence, it projected an image of American dominance, a silent, high-altitude taunt that whispered of a future where their defenses were obsolete, their secrets lay bare, and their power diminished. The frustration, the sheer impotent rage of Soviet air defense commanders watching the Blackbird streak across their radar screens, knowing they could do nothing, was a silent victory for the West, a triumph of technology over brute force. This aerial phantom, this dark harbinger of American prowess, instilled a deep-seated sense of vulnerability, a chilling understanding that in the high-stakes game of Cold War espionage, the Americans held an unassailable advantage in the skies. The Blackbird wasn't just a plane, it was a psychological weapon, flying at the edge of space, pushing the Soviets to the brink of despair. Its legacy was not just in the intelligence it gathered, but in the profound fear and respect it commanded from its adversaries, a fear that permeated every level of the Soviet military and political establishment. The sheer audacity of its design, the seemingly impossible feats it performed with routine regularity, served to amplify the sense of helplessness among those tasked with defending Soviet airspace. The Blackbird was a constant, silent aggressor, not with bombs, but with the relentless pressure of its existence, forcing the Soviets to expend vast resources in a futile pursuit, diverting attention and funds from other critical areas. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare, a testament to the idea that sometimes the most effective weapon is the one that is never fired, but merely observed, its capabilities a constant, terrifying whisper in the minds of the enemy. The Senior 71 was more than an aircraft. It was a symbol of American technological ascendancy, a dark angel of reconnaissance that cast a long, unsettling shadow over the Soviet Union, a shadow of fear, frustration, and undeniable inferiority. As the 1980s dawned, a new nightmare emerged from the American imagination, one that threatened to unravel the very fabric of Cold War deterrence. The Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI. Dubbed Star Wars by the media, this ambitious program, unveiled by President Ronald Reagan in 1983, proposed a shield in space, a network of satellites, lasers, and particle beams designed to intercept and destroy incoming Soviet ballistic missiles. For decades, the grim stability of mutual assured destruction had kept the peace. Both superpowers knew that a nuclear attack would inevitably lead to their own annihilation. SDI, however, threatened to shatter this delicate balance. If America could build an impenetrable defense, it would render the Soviet nuclear arsenal obsolete, stripping Moscow of its primary deterrent and leaving it utterly exposed to a first strike. The Soviet reaction was immediate and visceral. Their leadership, already grappling with a stagnant economy and technological inferiority, saw SDI not merely as a defensive measure, but as the ultimate offensive weapon. It was a declaration that America intended to win a nuclear war, not just deter one. The rhetoric from Moscow was furious, denouncing SDI as a dangerous escalation, a destabilizing force that would inevitably lead to a new, even more perilous arms race. But beneath the bluster lay a profound, gnawing fear. The Soviets understood the immense technological challenge that SDI represented. They knew their own scientific and industrial base, already strained, could not hope to compete with the American capacity for innovation and massive investment. The prospect of a space-based defense system, with its exotic technologies and astronomical costs, was an economic terror. It threatened to bankrupt their already struggling nation, forcing them into a technological race they could not possibly win. Reagan's vision, coupled with his defiant evil empire speech, painted a stark picture for the Kremlin. They genuinely believed that the United States was preparing for a winnable nuclear war, and SDI was the linchpin of that strategy. The psychological impact was immense. The Soviet military, accustomed to parity in conventional forces and a credible nuclear deterrent, suddenly faced the prospect of a future where their most powerful weapons were useless, their strategic doctrine rendered meaningless. The very idea of American satellites patrolling the heavens, ready to swat down their missiles like FLIs, instilled a deep sense of vulnerability and paranoia. It was a technological leap that seemed almost fantastical. Yet the Americans, with their track record of innovation, appeared capable of achieving it. The fear was not just of the weapons themselves, but of the seemingly limitless American ingenuity that could conceive and potentially build such a system. SDI became a symbol of American technological supremacy, a testament to a nation that could dream big and then, terrifyingly, make those dreams a reality. This was the ultimate psychological blow, a vision of a future where the Soviet Union was not just outmatched, but fundamentally outmaneuvered, relegated to a secondary power in a world dominated by American technological might. The star was initiative, more than any other single program, solidified the Soviet belief that they were in a losing battle, a technological arms race they could not afford to win, and certainly could not afford to lose. It was a silent, relentless pressure that contributed significantly to the internal decay and eventual collapse of the Soviet system, a testament to the power of perceived technological invincibility. The sheer scale of the proposed system, the audacious vision of weaponizing space itself, sent shockwaves through the Soviet military and political establishment. It was a challenge that went beyond mere military competition. It was a challenge to their very economic and scientific viability. The fear was not just of a successful SDI, but of the immense resources they would be forced to divert to even attempt to counter, resources they simply did not possess. This forced introspection, this painful realization of their own limitations in the face of American technological might, was a crucial factor in the unraveling of the Soviet Empire. SDI was not just a defense program. It was a psychological weapon of unparalleled power, designed to exploit and exacerbate the inherent weaknesses of their adversary, ultimately pushing them towards an inevitable breaking point. It was a game of high-stakes poker, and the Americans, with their technological aces, were playing to win, leaving the Soviets with a hand they could not possibly play. The Pershing II, the Senior 71 Blackbird, and the Strategic Defense Initiative were not merely isolated technological advancements. They were carefully orchestrated instruments of psychological warfare, designed to erode the Soviet Union's confidence, instill a pervasive sense of inferiority, and ultimately break their will to compete. The American strategy during the Cold War wasn't solely about military might. It was about projecting an image of unstoppable innovation, of a nation perpetually on the cutting edge, leaving its adversaries in a constant state of anxiety, awe, and ultimately despair. This was a war waged as much in the minds of men as it was on battlefields or in proxy conflicts across the globe. The very existence of these technologies, their capabilities often exaggerated by rumor and fear, served to amplify the internal pressures already fracturing the Soviet system. The psychological impact was profound and multifaceted. The Pershing II, with its lightning-fast strike capability, fostered a paralyzing fear of a decapitation strike, a scenario where their leadership could be neutralized before they could even react. This created an atmosphere of constant vigilance and paranoia, forcing Soviet strategists to consider worst-case scenarios and doubt the efficacy of their own command and control systems. The Senior 71, a phantom in the skies, reinforced the notion that American intelligence could penetrate their most secure airspace with impunity, exposing their vulnerabilities and undermining their claims of military prowess. It was a constant, visible reminder of their inability to defend their own borders against the most advanced American reconnaissance, a humiliation that stuck deeply within the proud Soviet military establishment. And then there was SDI, the ultimate psychological weapon, threatening to render their entire nuclear arsenal, the very foundation of their superpower status, utterly useless. This wasn't just about a technological gap, it was about an existential threat, a vision of a future where the Soviet Union was no longer a peer, but a subordinate power, unable to project its will or protect its interests. The Cold War, therefore, was not merely a contest of ideologies or military might. It was a profound psychological struggle, a battle for the hearts and minds of nations, and within the Soviet Union, a battle for the very soul of its leadership. The American technological edge, exemplified by the Pershing II, the Senior 71, and SDI, became a potent tool in this psychological warfare. It fostered a sense of inevitability, a growing conviction within the Soviet elite that they were fighting a losing battle against an adversary whose ingenuity and resources were simply insurmountable. This constant pressure, this gnawing doubt, contributed significantly to the internal decay of the Soviet system, accelerating its eventual collapse. The fear of being outmatched, outmaneuvered, and ultimately rendered irrelevant was a powerful catalyst for change, a silent force that reshaped the geopolitical landscape. The American triumph in the Cold War was not just a victory of arms, but a victory of innovation, a testament to the power of technological superiority to instill fear, inspire awe, and ultimately to dismantle an empire from within. This was the true terror, the silent, psychological victory that defined an era, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most potent weapons are not those that explode, but those that sow the seeds of doubt and despair. What other Cold War technologies do you believe had the most significant psychological impact on the global stage? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this exploration into the darker corners of Cold War history compelling, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the conflicts and innovations that shaped our world. The narrative of American technological supremacy was not merely a byproduct of military development. It was a deliberate and highly effective strategy. Each new advancement, from the precision of the Pershing II to the untouchable speed of the Senior 71 and the ambitious vision of SDI, served to reinforce a singular, terrifying message to the Soviet Union: you are outmatched. You are outmaneuvered. You are obsolete. This message, delivered not through diplomatic channels, but through the undeniable reality of technological prowess, was a constant psychological assault. It forced the Soviet Union into a reactive posture, always playing catch-up, always trying to counter a threat that was already evolving. The economic strain of this relentless technological arms race was immense, diverting precious resources from a struggling civilian economy and exacerbating internal discontent. The fear of a technologically superior adversary was not just a military concern. It was a societal one, undermining faith in their own system and leadership. The American edge was not just about winning battles. It was about winning the war of perception, convincing the world, and more importantly, convincing the Soviets themselves that their system was inherently inferior. This psychological victory, built on a foundation of technological innovation and strategic deployment, proved to be one of the most decisive factors in the ultimate outcome of the Cold War. It was a chilling demonstration of how fear, when expertly wielded through technological superiority, could become a weapon more potent than any bomb, capable of dismantling an empire from within, leaving behind a legacy of awe and a profound understanding of the true cost of technological stagnation. Subscribe now and join us as we unveil the definitive narrative of America's victory in the Cold War.